You're listening to the HUD Podcast, the official podcast for the Hudsonian newspaper at Hudson Valley Community College. An HVCC podcast for the students, by the students. Your news now. Get ready to enter the HUD. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to a very special episode of the HUD, the official podcast for the Hudsonian newspaper at Hudson Valley Community College. I'm Nolan Cleary. I'm the managing editor for the Hudsonian. Throughout the over 50 years of the Hudsonian's existence, staff continues to come and go, building new friendships and experiences. Today, we'll be talking to some former Hudsonian e-board members about the memories and experiences they built up at the paper. Joining me today, we have former business manager for the Hudsonian, Saloma Ayoub, former managing editor for the Hudsonian, and musical artist, Mr. Everyday, former sports editor for the Hudsonian, and Spectrum News affiliate, Randy Hammond, former layout editor for the Hudsonian, Jacob Freehart, former photo editor for the Hudsonian, Griffin Onderchain, former sports editor for the Hudsonian, John Longton III, former news editor for the Hudsonian, Angela Scipione, and former creative editor for the Hudsonian, Betsy Stenard. Thank you all for joining me today. I'll start with a question for all of you, and you can all take turns answering it. What got you to joining the Hudsonian in the first place? And we'll start with you, Saloma.
I'm not even gonna lie, you guys. It was in the same room as my Calc 1 lecture, so I just stayed the extra hour after class. I was like, yo, I'll just see where this goes.
We'll go now to you, Mr. Everyday. What got you to joining the Hudsonian in the first place?
Rachel Bourne. You know, I had her, it was like my first semester. I think my very first class of the day was journalism, which, you know, I'm like, as much as I love to write, if you know about like a Bourne journalism class, you're about to go through the ringer. So but one of the things that she offered, like she showed us, she had somebody come in from the paper because she's always doing the, self-promotion for the, for the Hudsonian and everything. She's always promoting it. So she had a staffer come in and pretty much, say, hey, listen, if anyone's interested, in trying to be a part of the Hudsonian. So he talked more about it. But what she said was, which attracted me, she said, if you're able to write up any article that gets featured in the paper, you get extra credit. She's like, that's huge for extra credit. So I wind up writing an article that wound up on the front page of the paper. So once that happened, it was kind of like a no-brainer, like, to become a part of it. She was like, you really should just kind of come on board. So I was like, yeah, you don't have to ask me twice. So I wound up actually, because of Rachel getting involved, through journalism class. And then, I wound up starting out as a writer, but then I became the creative editor first. So I was a creative editor. And then ultimately by the second semester, I morphed into managing editor. So yeah, that was kind of short and sweet.
Randy, what got you to joining the Hudsonian in the first place?
It was similar to Mr. Everyday there. I had two classes with Rachel Bourne in my first semester at Hudson Valley, and it was media and culture, and it was journalism. And if you know anything about her classes, how she teaches, it's very different. It's unique. Like Everyday said, you go through the ringer. For me, it was like I was really attracted to her writing style, her teaching style. It was like she called you out if you made a mistake. She didn't just call you out, make you look stupid. She like told you what you did wrong, and I was like, all right, well, I can appreciate that. So the meeting, I think, was that day, and she had like what Everyday said, like you had, a person from the paper come in and talk to you about why you should join the paper. So I was like, all right, I'll go and do that. And then they talked about the trips, like how we went to New York City and you got to go to these places and you got to like work hand in hand with athletes. Like I was all about sports. That's what I wanted to do. So, naturally it just attracted me to that and I wanted to write. So it was a perfect fit.
Yeah. Jake, how did you come to join the Hudsonian in the first place?
Well, I was walking on my classes one day and I I saw a flyer on one of the clipboards, and I saw that, and I just kept on seeing it everywhere across campus, and I thought, might as well just stop in one day. The first meeting was interesting, but I decided to stick around, and it was just fun. A lot of great people there, and it was nice to expand my knowledge in different areas and different things, and I don't know, it was just great to do that, and it was all just because of a little flyer I saw on the wall.
And we'll turn now to John. John, what got you to joining the Hudsonian in the first place?
Basically, Rachel, like everyone else said, I was taking her class and she offered extra credit. And then I stopped down to the office. I pitched an idea that originally got shot down. So I just did it anyway and sent it in, and it ended up getting printed. So that's my first stint with the paper, and I was a permanent fixture ever since my tenure at Hudson Valley.
Griffin, how did you come to joining the Hudsonian in the first place?
So I kind of just accidentally walked in on one of the meetings the first time around, and it was before we did any of the editorial elections and stuff. And after the first meeting, I just pretty much forgot about it. And then I don't know if you guys remember Sam Biscup, but he reminded me the day of the next meeting that they were doing the elections. And I just kind of walked in and ran for photo editor, and somehow miraculously got the job when everybody else running against me was way more qualified than I was. Yeah, I'm just so glad I did, because Hudsonian's the bomb. Oh my, it was so much fun.
Now, Angela, explain to us how you ended up joining the Hudsonian in the first place.
So I actually got an email from a professor. It was at the end of my first year at Hudson Valley, and that was when the majority of that e-board was leaving, and they really had one or two people that were in it. So they really needed more people to join, and I was like, you know what, I hadn't really made a group at Hudson Valley yet, and I was like, this might be a good way to meet people and kind of get out of my comfort zone. So I went to the first meeting, and I stuck around from there. I thought it was interesting.
And finally, Betsy, how did you end up joining the Hudsonian in the first place?
I remember I always wanted to join a club and just to meet people, kind of similar to what Angela said, kind of wanted to reach out and get to know people a little bit better, and a good way to do that is through a club. But I actually remember at the end of a fall semester, I met Jay actually through my dad, who was a professor at the college, and he was talking about the Hudsonian, and I already expressed I was interested in joining. And then by the spring, very early on, then I kind of jumped into it and kind of tried to figure it all out pretty fast. But I also knew that I really liked writing, and I felt like I also had a pretty good idea of some of the events and the campus itself. I felt like I had an okay idea of that, and so I felt like I could offer something. And everything just clicked into place really nicely, and I was really, really happy as soon as it happened.
Now, I want to ask a question for Saloma. Saloma, what got you to running for business manager?
I'm glad you asked, Nolan. So my whole identity is kind of shaped by my family. Everyone around me studied science, so I was I'll study science. My dad is the only black sheep of the family. He studied business administration and finance. And so I was I'll rep my pops for the one go. And it was really interesting to be outside of my comfort zone, because I spend my whole day just doing chemistry homework and stuff like that. So I was I'll try something new.
Now, Mr. Everyday, what were some of your biggest accomplishments in your 2 years as managing editor?
I think one of the best things that we did was we were kind of a part of a wave of administration that transitioned the Hudsonian into a more professionally run newsroom. So I think up to that point, it was kind of I can't really speak for years before I got there, but what I do know is when I got there, it wasn't as professional. It was kind of okay, we're a bunch of kids, we're doing this newspaper, it's cool. When we took it over, we really had some very mature students that were a little older. And because I was a returning student, I had graduated years prior to that And then I didn't go to college right away. Like I played football for like 1 year and then I left and came and like I was gone for like almost a decade before I went back to school. So when I'm coming back as an adult, you know what I mean? So everything I do, I'm not going to waste my time with. I'm going to be real professional. So what we did was we turned it into a real newsroom. We, I don't know if we had our office then, but if it's always been the office up on the second floor, they're still there, right? They're still in the same location, right? I don't know if we were there yet. I think we took over that room when I got there. And then what we did was I fought for us to have a television. Like do you still have the TV, the flat screen? Yeah, that's because of me. That's because of me. Because that's because of me. Like because I felt like, how are we going to be a newsroom? We don't even have like we need to have cable in here. We need to have the news. We need to have CNN. We need to be able to be abreast of current news and run this place like a real news station. So we set up all the offices where the editor-in-chief had his desk next to the managing editor, and I mean the news editor had his desk next to me, and then Martin had his own office in the other room, and we just were like really focused. And I think like it was just a huge transition into raising the standards and the level of the Hudsonian. Like we were the first group to ever have a video editor. Like we started doing like video blogs. So in addition to the actual paper coming out every week, we would vlog every week as well. So the vlog would come out before the paper. So the vlog was like a prelim to what was going to be. But we made the vlog so exciting that people started tuning in to see the vlog. So the vlog, and we used to do like roving reporter stuff where we would go different places. And then I would do roving reporter stuff like me and Zach Hitt. At that time, he was the news editor. So we just really made it very engaging for the whole entire Hudson Valley community. I think before then, it was like some people read the paper, but I think by the time we were done that semester, everyone was dialed into the paper. Everyone was dialed into the video blog. We even had old alumni from like 20 years past emailing, contacting us saying like, wow, the paper's the best it's ever been. We had the vice president of, I forgot his name at that time, if he's still there, but this is back when Drew was the president, Drew Matlock, when he was still the president. I forgot who was his VP at that time, but he literally like came in and like just congratulating us on all our success. And like we were getting letters from the president. Like the administration just absolutely loved us. And so I just noticed like a huge uptick in the way the entire Hudson Valley community looked at us and respected us. So for me, like I feel like I was like, even to the point where I feel like you guys are probably now benefiting from the foundation that we laid back then. Because we're talking about like 2010, 2011. Like I graduated from Hudson Valley in 2012. So from 2010 to 2012, we laid a serious foundation for that club to be respected. And we had a major budget. Like I think we had money, like we had real money, like thousands and thousands of dollars. And we put it to use. I want to say almost like our budget was like 50,000 or something. It was something ridiculous. We had a really sweet budget and we worked it. So I would just like, my whole thing was just, like I said, making the paper more official. I put a comic script called Vinny the Viking. I don't know if you guys if any of the past e-board ever saw the Vinny the Viking stuff, but that was my brainchild. Like I created that comic script, and you know it was legendary. Like people, like I remember Bourne telling me she saw someone walk up to the newsstand, pick up the paper just specifically to read the Vinny the Viking script, and then put the paper back down and walked off. Like that's how official like we got certain aspects of that paper to like where everyone was just so dialed in and couldn't wait for every episode to come out every week. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Now, Randy, I understand you and John Longton worked together quite a bit. What was that like?
I don't know, John and I really crossed paths with the Hudsonian a little bit. I was freelancing in my career before I got this job at Spectrum. I worked for a company called 518 Sports, which is now called the Upstate Courier. And John, were you doing Hudsonian stuff then, or were you doing UAlbany paper then?
I might have been at UAlbany covering their games through them.
Yeah.
And a little bit for the Daily Gazette as well.
Yeah, so I crossed paths with John.
We definitely saw each other in the field for sure.
Yeah, we didn't really get to work with each other on the Hudsonian, unfortunately.
So, John, what was it like when you first joined the Hudsonian?
I loved it. I loved the office. I loved the atmosphere. I love the fact that we got paid. I mean, I did the same stuff for UAlbany, and you don't get paid anything. They don't do anything. They don't go to the conferences. They don't pay you. There's no camaraderie there. I mean, I felt like there was a lot of camaraderie with the Hudsonian, and we were kind of a family. And it was just like, you had school spirit when you were working for the Hudsonian. You know, a lot of people at Hudson Valley don't really have that school spirit because it's just a community college, but it was a lot bigger than that for us, you know?
I'm just gonna jump in a little bit. I will absolutely say that the camaraderie is why I stayed. Like running into Angela and getting to like vent or like complain like for a hot second in the middle of the day, that like meant the world to me freshman year. So I just want to say, Angela, you made my life.
I fully agree with that too, John. I did go to a couple meetings at UAlbany for the paper, and I did not stick around there specifically because it was not the same vibe at all. So
yeah,
it's actually kind of funny because like I transferred to a new school, and like here at like Cornell, like I'm like pretty fresh here, and like I write for the science section, and my editors like they're like my major and like my class year and everything, but like I just felt like such a stranger, like so alienated to it, but like it's still a part of my identity. So I was like, yo, they're stuck with me for the next 2 years. Not going anywhere.
I'll turn now to Jake. Jake, you were a layout editor and a managing editor. What was it like to do both?
Well, I was staff writer for a little over a semester, and then the layout editor, he had to leave because he was just taking on too much work. And like, I had no previous experience in any sort of layout at all, but I always thought myself to be a little design savvy. And so, you know, people at the club, Angela, Kevin, Jay, Griffin, too, everybody that was you know, had been in the club for a while, they kind of took me through, you know, the steps of layout and stuff like that. And gradually I was able to get used to it. And then after that, you know, really start to, you know, try out new things and create a new style of the paper, and just kind of like, you know, take aspects of it and really just kind of like make it look better and more professional and stuff like that. But sadly, I wasn't able to keep on doing that because of academic reasons. So I moved on to managing, and kind of like what Mr. Every Other Day there, every day there, he said how he took the aspects of the paper and tried to make it more professional. And like, that's what I really tried to do too. I tried to centralize the communication system and stuff like that. And people remember we had a little Snapchat group chat. We had like, you know, matching emails. We tried to take the paper and really look at it under a microscope to see if we could create new positions. And we had, you know, little conversations about possible podcasts, but COVID kind of ruined that. And, you know, it's great to see that, Nolan, you were able to get that idea up and running and really take the paper to a whole new level and stuff like that. And, you know, that's great to see.
Thank you for that, Jake. Now, Griffin, I want to turn back to you. As stated earlier, you said that you had to go through a competitive match to become photo editor for the Hudsonian. What was that like, and how did you convince the paper that you were the best person to be photo editor?
Honestly, I don't really know how it happened. If I were in any one of the voting e-board members' shoes, I would not have picked me. Just as like a little comparison, for my pitch as the photo editor, I had pictures on my phone that I passed around to everybody at the meeting, and one of the people that I was going up against had like done professional photojournalism in like Vietnam.
Wow.
And yeah, and somehow I won. I'd like to think it's because I am funny, adorable, and cute. But I don't think that's how it worked out. I'm so happy they did choose me. I feel like we did. I feel like we got a lot of really good work done. Especially that first semester when I was there, like when Jake was what was it, layout, when Angela was news, when Betsy was business. I feel like that's when, at least in my time there, I feel like that's when we were like our strongest, and everybody was just like had such camaraderie together, and it was just so much fun.
Killed it at competition. We rose to that occasion.
Angela, you and I are similar in the sense that both of us were creative editor and news editor. For you, what was it like doing both?
So I ran for the creative editor position just because when I was going into it, there was really nobody, and we had to take the editor positions in order for there to even be a paper to be in existence. So I thought that maybe going in as creative would be a little bit easier to manage. Not that it's easier, but that it's there's more freedom to it. So it's not so strict, and I thought that it would be a way that I could get in and kind of figure out what I'm doing. And it was pretty obvious, I think, after a few issues. Once we got to competition, our editor-in-chief at the time, she said, you should really be doing news. You have the writing style of news. You are more interested. I was basically writing news in the creative section. I didn't really realize it until she told me that. So I did really have fun in creative. There's definitely more freedom to it, but I think I was more in tune with the news section, and I had a lot more fun kind of digging into the deep stuff at the school that I didn't realize I had that knack for until she kind of talked to me about it.
Betsy, explain to us, how did you get the job of creative editor?
I do remember that the Hudsonian did not have a creative editor, and I wrote one story. And I remember Jay telling me, if you just make it really good, I think you can be creative editor. And I was like, all right, let's see. Even though me never having written a news story before, but it was about an author, a local author, and I wrote about that. And then with the intention of running as creative editor, tried to learn as much as I could. And it was very much like what I appreciated about too, and this definitely speaks to the camaraderie, is that everyone really helped me, even though I didn't totally know. I mean, I wanted to learn and I wanted to figure it out, and I felt like I had good writing experience. I still, the position of creative editor or working in the news was unfamiliar to me. And so that was really great. So I feel like I learned a lot just within a few weeks, and I really wanted to contribute. And like Angela was saying, it does have like a nice amount of freedom to it. So it kind of, there's certain things you want to include, but you can also kind of make it what you want it to be. And I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of everything. And so I tried to just make it fun and interesting. And if it could make someone read it or pick it up the paper, it was, all the better. And so just like a fun creative outlet. And also I felt like it's a position that really welcomes a lot of brainstorming, a lot of like creative input. So I felt like it didn't have to just be me. I felt like it could be a lot of people like, oh, I have this really cool idea, and, come to me and we can try to make it happen, which was really nice.
Now, I want to ask you all a question once again, that being, how has the Hudsonian shaped your career?
Oh boy, I'm only 20, so I'm still figuring that out. So when I was at Hudson Valley, I was like, I think I never got paid to like do like Hudsonian work. It was just like a labor of love. And like I kind of got made fun of that by my friends, because they were like, why are you just giving up your time for free? And I was like, yo, just don't worry about it. But now at my new newspaper, like I get paid. I basically get like a full ride at my school now because they offered me a scholarship to like retain me as staff, and I was just like,
Really?
yeah. And it's really changing like my perspective of what my career is going to be. But I'm like, I'm a biologist. Like, how can I fit like reporting into that? But it's life changing for sure.
What school you go to?
I got to Cornell University in Ithaca.
Nice. I think for me, I was always in I've always been in communications, like going back to the 90s. I've been like a young guy, always doing stuff because like my father and my godfather were famous musicians from the 70s. And so I kind of grew up always in a media world. So I think what it did for me is it just made people respect me more as a journalist, because I wrote a lot. Like I wrote a ton. Like before, even when I was the creative editor, I used to write all the time because, as an editor, if there is no news, you have to create the news yourself. You have to be the one to go out there and write the story. So I think like before, it was really like the in thing to be a part of the newspaper. We made it that way by being very hands-on as the e-board. Like we were like, yo, we don't need staff. We are the staff. So we wound up actually getting more people to be involved because of how serious we took it. And I think that people noticed that, and it helped propel me into the next phase of my career, being in entertainment, because people knew I had the journalism background and the managing editor background. And I think it just helped to kind of forge an image of me as a very serious dude in media who's well versed. Like I produce, I'm an artist, I can write. So when people sit in front of me, there's really not like you can't jive me, you can't like bullshit me for lack of a better term, because I know every facet of doing something from A to Z. So I think it's really helped me because I always say like I'll never give somebody a job that I won't do myself. Like I won't tell you go sweep the floor and I haven't swept the floor. And I know how to sweep the floor. So it's the same approach that I take, that I took with the Hudsonian that I now take with my record label now is that, listen, I've done every position and every point of this. So when I deal with marketeers and marketing people and I deal with videographers, I have that knowledge. So I'm able to get that respect and have them listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just saying, okay, hey, go do this job, but I don't know what it entails. So I think for me, it's really helped to help establish me as a serious person in this industry.
I mean, it gave me so many things that I think so many of you would agree with. Like getting real reporting experience while you're in junior college is not something that just happens to everyone. I think that is invaluable. For me, it gave me a ton of confidence in my writing and my ability to tell stories because I had no experience coming in. I was very raw. So like I came in, like I would just write things that I would see on ESPN that were like hot takes. Like that's not news, that's an opinion. Like I know sports, but I don't know how to report on things. So it gave me the skills to talk to people, and it also gave me the ability to report. And also now, like I work on a show called Your Morning Albany for Spectrum News, and it's a live morning show from 6 to 9 every day. Those stories that we tell on that show, like in 2020, they just kind of happen, right? It's COVID, it's the election, it's all this stuff. But on a regular day, when this is a normal world, you have to come up with story ideas that people want to know about. So working for the Hudsonian, you understand what people in the community care about. You understand how to tell just like a normal person's story and make it sound interesting. Like I told so many stories about people who came from overseas and did things that they didn't think they could do, did something in honor of a loved one. And it's a similar way of locating stories now, but now I'm writing for the eye and not for the ear. But that same fundamental journalism aspect of it is still there. And the Hudsonian gave me that passion to do this, regardless if it's sports, news, for print, or for broadcasting.
Well, I feel like everybody so far has had like a very deep love of writing and journalism and stuff like that. And not that I didn't have that, but that wasn't my career choice. I went into chemical engineering. So really joining the Hudsonian didn't really, on paper, didn't have anything to do with my career. But in fact, it really had a lot to do with it because the EIC that I first worked with, Jay, he told me how at the Hudsonian, you work with other people to create a product, and that product is then put out to other people to kind of, critique and look at and take information from. And so for my seminar class this semester, one of our projects was to create a resume. And so on my resume, I was able to put all the stuff I did for the Hudsonian, layout, managing editor, certain aspects, winning the awards. And that really looks good. And what I realized at that moment was that the Hudsonian taught me a lot of skills that are very important in the workplace, like communication, collaboration, problem solving, meeting deadlines. And I feel like that those skills that the Hudsonian taught me, I wouldn't have been taught anywhere else before heading into my junior year of college. And I feel like that has given me a step, that has put me a step ahead of other people in terms of like, might be a deciding factor whether I get an internship or not, maybe even a job, because I have those skills that, some other people don't have. And that's really what the Hudsonian helped me with, and that's what I took away from it.
Well, pretty much just broke me into the field. It was kind of the first domino to fall. It's all about making connections and who you know kind of in every industry. And from there, I made a connection with the Valley Cats. And from the Valley Cats, I made a connection with the Gazette. And I got an internship there, and I started writing for those guys. Then I started at UAlbany, so I already knew everybody in the field. So I was already, acclimated a little bit. So then from there, I went to ESPN Radio and Town Square Media. And then from there, I went to the Patroons. It was the first domino to fall that kind of got my whole career, kicked off.
So prior to starting the Hudsonian, I was a really sheltered, introvert person. I only maybe had 3 or 4 friends at a time. But I feel like once I joined the Hudsonian, it really allowed me to be proud and confident with creative material that I was producing. And that, along with everybody else, just allowed me to really become more of an open person and like made it a lot easier for me to make friends. So now that I'm out here in Arizona, working in a creative field, as of right now, I'm like a music producer, DJ. It just allows me to make connections so much faster and meet new people so much faster, and really like search for those like valuable ties in between people to like, you know, get what I want to get and do what I want to do.
Well, I think piggybacking off of what Griffin said, before I joined the Hudsonian, I really, you know, I had kind of trouble meeting some new people at Hudson Valley. I just like didn't really want to talk to anyone, and even like when I joined the Hudsonian, I was terrified of doing the interviews. Like I was so scared. I did not really know how to make those connections. But learning with all those people and, you know, building up my confidence, building up my skills, now I feel like I could really do whatever I want. I mean, I'm still kind of an introvert, but I feel so much better. I feel confident in my skills. And I think what I learned will really take me where I need to go. And like Saloma said, I'm, you know, I don't really know what I'm gonna end up doing. Like I'm still 21 years old, but even with my internships that I've done, I was doing some PR work and stuff like that. And that really helped me. I was doing some calls to the local papers, and it was funny because I was like, oh, I'm calling the people that I used to do that job. So I kind of knew what they were looking for to pitch those press releases, which was great.
I think the interpersonal skills and also just like working on a team that you get from working on something like this, like we're so close and it's so reliant on us working together like well that alone is like a really good lesson no matter what career you go into. And so I think that's like something that I definitely really gained. I feel like no matter how many different teams and different things you do, you always learn something and always get better at things by doing things together and working in a team. With that said, there's also like being an editor, I feel like I got a lot of more leadership skills and learned how to take charge a little bit more, which for some people might not be always like their first impulse to like fully take charge. Like, okay, no, you do this, and like, you know, delegate the work and present ideas, which is another really big thing, kind of like being like slightly vulnerable. Like, okay, I want to write about this. Like, I have this idea. I just thought of it, you know, like that alone is also like, I think good practice to, again, for any field that you do, you need to be vulnerable and you need to be able to take charge. And I think that's really very important. Yeah, and also just like lessons learned from working on a team with people is always valuable.
Now, Saloma, currently you're working for Cornell University's newspaper. How does that newspaper compare to the Hudsonian?
Boy, oh boy, it's so different. It made me realize that you can transfer credit hours, but you can't transfer a reputation. Like, I could walk into anybody's office at Hudson Valley and they'd be like, oh, Saloma, like, hey, of course, I'll give you 20 minutes of my time. Here, I had to send 12 emails to get my first story. I was chasing after that scoop for a whole month. People, it has never taken me a whole month to write an article. I was just so hurt. I was like, I can get a story done in one day. What do you mean I have to be patient for a whole month to get this cooking? But now I'm learning how to acclimate to picking up on a story, like on my new campus. It's definitely hard, but it honestly just matches like the trend. It's always like difficult to like, I don't know, like I just think change is hard, but like my first article for the Hudsonian, I don't know why I had the audacity to submit like a 300-word story to Zoe, and I was like, yo, this is my article, and she looked at me, she was like, baby girl, I'm sorry, this is not it. And I feel like it's like that. It was just like a different transition. It just looks different, but it's the same concept.
I want to move back to you, Mr. Everyday. As stated earlier, you spent a lot of your time at the Hudsonian working on a cartoon based on Vinny the Viking. What was it like working on the adventures of Vinny the Viking?
I think after a certain point in time, it just started coming easy for me because I understood like what my overall goal was with it. Like, here was a kid that well, first of all, it was about Hudson Valley pride. So I wanted it to make him like he was so in love with the school that he didn't want to graduate. So he basically went to Hudson Valley for 6 years. So it was like, you know, and obviously it's a 2-year school, but he's there for 6 years. So I had the whole thing about him. He was one thing, but once I started incorporating him having a girlfriend, Vicky, and then like her goal was for them to graduate and then transfer to a 4-year school together. But then there was like this sub thing that we had going on with these bunnies. Now the bunnies I can't take credit for. I had Neil. What was his name? I can't remember his name.
Tyler McNeil.
Say it again.
Tyler McNeil.
No, not Tyler. I can't remember his name. I don't know if Randy remembers who the artist was. All right, but he started. He did it by accident. He kind of just like drew a bunny in the background, and he did it like in 2 episodes where he had him almost. Vinny had like a pet bunny. So I was like, yo, listen, bro, you're onto something with this bunny thing. We're going to incorporate the bunny as like every time he gets into something, the bunny's doing different things in each scene. So I'll never forget, we got it to the point where the bunny, where when Vinny met Vicky, she had a pet bunny too. So their 2 bunnies fell in love. So we started creating like side stories with the bunnies. So the way it wraps up, he's supposed to take his final exam so that he can graduate from Hudson Valley and transfer and go off with Vicky. But his bunny was supposed to wake him up for the final, but his bunny threw a party, and it's a big carrot party. And so there's like one scene where there's all these bunnies laid out and they're drunk. So picture like the carrots are like alcohol, and they got all these carrots laid all out, and his bunny's all drunk from eating all these carrots, and he's just laid all out. So he wakes up like, Bunny, you forgot to wake me up for my final. And the bunny's like got a hangover from drinking, from eating all the carrots and stuff. So he winds up like breaking up. She breaks up with him because he didn't take his final, which means he doesn't graduate. And so he winds up like toasting with the bunny, like 1 more year. And they're toasting like, we did it. I'm still going to be able to stay here at Hudson Valley. So it was just like a thing that just kind of started off in one fashion, being just like, okay, a cool thing, to becoming like this iconic thing for Hudson Valley for those 2 years that people just looked at like, yo, this is the epitome of the paper. So it was just really exciting. I just started being able to write deeper and deeper storylines. And I started incorporating like real life issues that college students go through Vinny's, you know, as a male going to school. And then I incorporated the female element into it, and people just could relate to it. I think that was the biggest aspect of it, is it wasn't just like some fictitious thing. It was like real stories that people would go through being students, you know, on campus, and food, like not having food, and all different types of different things. So to me, like, I'm just really proud of it, because not only was it informative, but it was just funny. It was just like, even for me, like to be able to see it every week, because it's one thing when you put it together, it's another thing to see it in the paper. You know, you kind of, it's more of a connection to it, like when you actually are able to see it screen by screen and everything. And I'm just really proud of it. You know, when I look back at that, that was like one of like the highlights of being on the Hudsonian, was being able to be a part of the Vinny the Viking series. You know, I know somebody tried to keep it going afterwards, but they couldn't. They just couldn't do it, because for one, they didn't have the vision that I had, one. And two, also when you add a different artist to it, that takes away from it. Because if he can't draw the same way, and he can't, like, you know, really have that vision to, it just wasn't the same. So I think they just decided to leave it as a legendary comic strip and let it go.
Randy, what was it like jumping from the Hudsonian to the Spectrum News?
Oh, I gotta say, I mean, I did the Hudsonian like 7 years ago now, so it's been a while. But you know, the jump for me is the difference in topics, because I covered sports. I was very passionate about sports coming in. I still am a huge sports fan. If you follow me on Twitter or on any social media, you know I care more about sports than anything else. Like I crack jokes about it. It's something I'm passionate about in general. So even like when I left Hudson Valley, I went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie. I didn't get to write for the newspaper there because I was commuting, but I still started to transition because of a teacher there said, hey, the whole world's not about sports. There's more to it than that. So I was like, all right, I guess I should start caring about news and all this stuff. And that was the 2016 election year. So kind of got thrown into the fire with covering some topics around that. And now when I graduated, it took me a solid year to even find a job in this field. and everyone says it's a competitive field, and it is. But opportunities don't just come. You kind of have to get out there and meet people and know people. And honestly, I have the job I have now because of my being a sports editor on the Hudsonian, because the coach of the Hudson Valley baseball team, when I covered them, was Joey DiPiazza, who then started doing football coverage for Spectrum News alongside Marissa Jacks. Because I knew Joey, he wanted me to write an article about them doing football, like Friday night football games for high school sports in the area. So I covered that, and Joey said, hey, I think you would really fit in with these guys. Why don't you apply? So when I interviewed the news director for this article, he tells me he liked that I didn't misquote him. It's all he cared about is that I didn't misquote him. So I wrote the article. He thought I was credible. They had a position available, and that's how I got this job. So to tie it all back, because I worked for the Hudsonian, is how I got this job at Spectrum News. But the biggest jump and the biggest difference really is that I covered primarily sports, and I'm comfortable covering sports my whole life. Now I have to transition and kind of learn more about news and community-based stories that are important. And it's not all politics. There's a number of different things that maybe I didn't know the history of. But what I have going for me is that I'm from the Capital Region. I kind of understand the history of this area. But in general, the biggest jump for me is covering sports, especially sports at a junior college level, to covering news, especially in a state capital where so many things are going on all the time.
Now, John, what were some of the challenges and benefits to being a sports editor?
Getting people to cover stories. I remember one day, like, having to cover every sports game possible, like bouncing around what was going on. Like, it's tough to get people to first off, do something and like say they're going to be there and actually go and do it. Like, it's very tough. I remember, I think one day there was a soccer game, a football game, and something else going on at the same exact time. And I had to time it just right to get quotes from all three stories and, get a photographer at all three games. There was just so much stuff going on. It's hard to coordinate everything, to be honest.
Angela, when you were news editor, did anyone at the college ever have any problem with what you were publishing in the news section?
Generally, for the most part, everyone was okay with answering questions, and, they knew what we were doing, and they knew that we had the college's best interest. But there was, a few times where certain people, mostly professors, would have a problem with what we were trying to cover and would, not give us a comment, or they'd be kind of rude towards us. But, no comment is a comment in itself. So, I mean, for the most part, definitely, though, people were totally fine with it. And it was received relatively well.
Betsy, what were your favorite aspects of the job of creative editor?
Well, definitely just some of the stuff I've already said, like working with everyone and getting to be part of that team was really nice. And being like the leader and being able to like present stories, very similar to what both of the other two had said about getting people to get on stories was definitely like a continuous struggle. I think of always like I would present these ideas that I thought were like, oh, this seems like pretty fun and easy, and then no one takes them. Like, I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know what I did. I don't know. I thought these were pretty good ideas, but yeah, I think just everything I've already said about being really nice, great way to meet people and like hone your writing skills and editing skills. For me, that's definitely like I learned a lot more about different editing and like the specific type of APA editing and working on the team, and also just understanding how a newspaper works was also like totally new to me. And so that was really interesting in itself that I really enjoyed learning more about.
Before we wrap up, I want to give you all one more quick question. If you could describe your experience at the Hudsonian in 3 words, what would it be?
Unforgettable. And then I'll use my last 2 words in a hyphenated form, and I'll say life-changing again.
Educational, fun, and the last word I would say like family, because I feel like that everybody that was a part of that era with me is like my family for life. Like, I guess I could see Randy like 20 years from now, and if I had $1 and it was the last one, he's getting it. Like, it's just that connection that I have to everybody. It's just a truly pure connection that we were able to have. So I feel like we're like a fraternity and a sorority combined like forever.
I don't think I could just choose 3 words. There are so many things I could say about my experience. I'm so grateful to have that in my back pocket and something that I can remember and hold back on and call back to and just say, hey, I have all, like every day said, all of those people who I consider my brothers and sisters who I was in the mud with and digging out and trying to get through deadlines with and trying to come up with layouts late night on Monday night, trying to get the paper done in time. Like I slept on that couch every week, every Monday for a whole semester. So I guess groundbreaking because that's got me into the journalism business. I would say educational, like every day said, and then grateful just because I'm very grateful to have that holding close to my heart.
Memorable. Feel like fun, but I don't know. It's a little more than that. I just can't think of a different word. And then last but not least, I know it's not a hyphenated word, but I'm gonna have to use that. Learning experience.
Beat El Don.
Oh, El Don.
Y'all are amazing. Those are my 3 words. Like the people that I met during my time at the Hudsonian are like some of the most incredible people I'll probably ever meet. Like I love all of you guys and I miss you all so much.
I'll bring back some repeats, but family for sure, fun, and I would say like fueling because I was definitely always on my feet. Like it was like a good type of stress, you know what I mean?
Definitely. I might go over the word count here. I'm not sure. Learning opportunity 1, like informative in the same sense, but entertaining for sure. I feel like it's fun, but even more so just entertaining all the time. Just always something going on.
For sure.
All right, that about wraps up this week's episode of The HUD. I want to thank you all for joining me once again. Some of you I worked with, but for everyone here, I want to say thank you so much for all of your service to the Hudsonian. All right, well, the very first season of The HUD is finally coming to a close. Next week, in our season finale, we'll talk to a number of former editors-in-chief of the Hudsonian about what it was like for them to run the paper through different generations. Stay tuned. To read more about the following stories, make sure to head over to thehudsonian.org for the latest on-campus news from the Hudsonian, and make sure to listen to new episodes of The HUD every Monday.